Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple, to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the privilege of hosting Jay Patterson. Jay's a retired U.S. Navy Chief Petty Officer with a background in fast attack submarines, and his career is steeped in resilience, adaptability, and leadership. With years spent navigating high-stakes environments during the Cold War, Jay transitioned seamlessly into corporate world, leading transformative turnarounds and navigating mergers with an approach that blends military precision and compassionate leadership. Beyond his impressive military and corporate achievements, Jay has channeled his experiences into Wolfpack Leadership, a program dedicated to empowering individuals and organizations to tackle challenges head-on. His work in coaching, speaking, and consulting reflects real-life lessons that he has lived, with an emphasis on growth and transformation. Jay's story is a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of a second chances, and the value of mentoring others along the way. Jay joins us to share his journey, the pivotal moments that have defined his life, and the principles that continue to guide him in making difference for others. Let's dive in with Jay Patterson, a true embodiment of what a strategic veteran is. Jay, brother, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Let's just jump right in since you're so eager. Where did you grow up, and what inspired you to join, my man?
Well, Adam, hey, thanks for having me on, and I am humbled by your introduction. Thank you very much. I'm originally from North Dakota, of all places. So, population 600,000 people. I grew up in the fifth largest city of the state, all 15,000 people. And, I actually grew up in a law enforcement and farming family. I know that might sound a little strange, but that's what it was. My uncles were all cops or in the fire department, and my grandparents were farmers. So, needless to say, my mom worked, my dad worked. My mom worked days, my dad worked nights. So, basically, I was in a position where I did pretty much what I wanted when I was growing up. I mean, it would be the sun would come up in the morning. I was probably already out and about, and when the street lights turned on at night and up that far north, it didn't get dark in the summertime until like about 10, 11 o'clock. So I was out and about. The only thing we had to be careful of is the siren, when curfew hit at 10:30, which I doubt they do anymore. So needless to say, I grew up pretty independent. Other than, part of that challenge that I had, the independence, there was a flip side to it. And needless to say, that's probably one of the primary reasons why I joined the military. I dreamed originally of going into the military academy, but when I was 13 years old, we'll just say differences in my life, how I was brought up. I actually was busted for numerous counts of grand theft auto when I took off to Billings, Montana with my best friend. And needless to say, we were caught. We paid restitution. We went on probation, but I pretty well screwed up my chances of going in the academy. So on my 17th birthday, I kind of made that decision of either A, go to the Hard Rock Hotel, or B, go to the Navy Submarines. And I chose Navy Submarines. Now, my best friend, different story. He ended up dying in prison, again.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up going in the military, and it was the best choice I ever made, even though I still didn't quite grow up for a few years. I don't know why that was.
Well, that's all of us, brother. It's not just you. So you're out stealing cars, like not just petty theft. You went all the way to grand theft auto. What was it about stealing cars?
We were going. I was a great fan of Grizzly Adam. I loved the beard. Okay, so we were heading to Montana to basically live on our own. And it was that was it. We were gone. We were heading out, and again, and it worked. Again, it worked out. End result, but I wasn't clean and squeaky either because I tried every which way to sabotage my future. And that's why I say the day that I left for the military, I was basically outrunning everything else that was behind me. That was it. Friends that I left behind, again, most of them have either passed on or uh, left the state. It's one or the other. There's no other options there.
I resonate with that so much because I joined running away from all of the things where I grew up as well, right? There's an element of running away there. I'm curious, why the Navy and why submarines? Did you look at any other branches? Did you consider anything else, or was that just kind of first option? I've got to make a change here, or else.
Well, I really originally wanted to go in the Marines, so I wanted to go to the academy, of course, Navy Academy, right? And then I wanted to go in the Marines, and I wanted to be a photographer of all things. And the timeline, number one, to get into it was forever. Okay, so that wasn't an option. Number two, my recruiter was crawling up my butt because I scored high enough to be a nuke, which there was no way I was going to do that, And then on the flip side, it was my dad, he was in the Navy at one point, and he wouldn't sign for me to go in early to join the Marines. He would only sign for me to go into the Navy. So, all in all, basically, I had one option: go in the Navy or go into handcuffs. Okay, so it was like I chose the Navy, and actually that was even a quickie because I got mono my senior year in high school, and I mean that just threw everything for a loop because I signed up and I was supposed to leave the next spring right after graduation. Oh no, nope, nope, nope. I got nailed with mono. I lost like 30 pounds in 3 weeks, and they kicked me out of school. I had enough credits to graduate, but they kicked me out of school because I'd missed too much time. And then they didn't do a midterm graduation, so it was like everything was turned upside down again. So I had to find a small school just north of where we were to graduate from, actually, where they had a winter graduation. And it was me and three other people I never met in my life.
So you're getting a lesson in resilience even before you get in, with all the roadblocks, holding you up from getting even into basic training. That's incredible, man. What
Life is roadblocks, right?
Yeah, it's every day. Yeah, every time I turn around, it's something new. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But so submarines, you scored high enough to be a Navy nuke, and I know that you're glad that you didn't do that because I just had the privilege of having Brandon Aaron on, who was a Navy nuke, and I was blown away by their op tempo and how much work they actually do. It was incredible. For 4 years, he worked 120 hours a week. I mean, and like the man wasn't exaggerating. Like you could tell when people are exaggerating that, but he walked us through, just a day in the life of a Navy nuke. And I was like, that is miserable. Like I can't even imagine. No such thing as work-life balance. Your whole life is work. At times he said he was sleeping in the maintenance bay in the dry dock, working on the nuclear submarines. So I'm sure there's a difference between a nuclear submarine and a fast attack submarine, or maybe they're the same thing. I don't know Navy. I'm not afraid to admit that. So let's talk about what are fast attack submarines, and let's really talk about, because I'm really interested. You're doing this at the height of the Cold War.
Right.
So yeah, how was that experience in addition to what are fast attack submarines?
Well, fast boats are, again, the term was big and black and never come back for our boat. We were stationed, this is the time of the buildup for 500 ships in the Navy. So they were not getting rid of any submarines whatsoever. Because again, you wanted to have a 500 ship Navy, whether or not it was a paper Navy or not. And, the option was ballistic missile submarines or Tridents, which, they switch off crews. So, for 3 months, they'll have one crew on, then they'll come in and refit, and then 3 months, the next crew will go off. Okay. Decent. There's a balance of life when you're in port. Thank you. But I was on fast boats. So, like my first boat, between midshipman ops and deployments and everything else in the world, I mean, we were at sea, or the lines were thrown 300 days out of the year. Okay. So you had 130 guys minimum on a submarine, less than 300 feet long. with 2/3 of that submarine being engineering spaces. Okay, and again, and we were short of people also because again, you're trying to spread across 500 ships, right? So myself and you mentioned nukes. I mean, nukes had it horrendous. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, when I was getting 4 hours of sleep a day, they were getting 1 to 1.5 to 2. And in my mind, that is absolutely again, it is incredible. But needless to say, I mean, the Cold War was a ball. I mean, working up for it, of course, doing oars, everything else. You were so dead it didn't matter. People always ask, well, how could you stand it? Well, you were too tired to even notice it, okay? Because you know, myself and another guy, we were port and starboard forever. We were forward ETs, we were port and starboard on watches. We ran an 18-hour day. I think they've changed that now, where it's a 24-hour day. But and what we did is we just basically ran until we dropped. So he would go on watch and just keep on watch until he was ready to drop, and then I would do the same thing. But the thing is, once you get on, when you were doing oars and deployments, well, oars, which is basically a workup, for an inspection, um, or if you were on deployment overseas, when you weren't doing your primary job, you were doing what was called geoplot. And what that was is manual fire control. That way, if fire control goes down, you're there. You have a solution for them. You can sit there and go, yeah, shoot the torpedo, snapshot, whatever, go. And so, I mean, yeah, it was incredible what we did because we were places, just like doing seal ops. We took seals out and we would dump them off the coast. They would either go out the escape trunk or you would surface and dump them off the coast. They'd go in and do whatever they're going to do, come back out, and they'd start dropping percussion grenades in the water every minute and key the mic at a certain frequency every minute. So you would end up then chasing them down wherever they were at, so you can go pick them up. And
That's pretty
and
cool.
it was cool. It was very cool. And the worst thing was we had a radar system that was the nastiest thing in the world. It was a Beeps 14 radar, and again, I mean, it was on middle level, so there's no way it can flood. If it floods, you're in trouble. Okay, so because you'd have that much water. But during one of the seal ops, I mean, we had just gotten it back up and running again, and it was like I say, this thing was a nasty beast. And I mean, you go to tune it every watch and you get zapped and get thrown against the wall that's 2.5 feet behind you because you couldn't get replacement parts for the Teflon rings to put in there. So
Typical military.
exactly, and next thing you know, you hear flooding in middle level. I'm in my rack and they're yelling, and the alarm's going off, flooding in middle level. It can't flood in middle level, you know. So you go running out there and water's streaming down, and you're like, what happened? And you find the breakers for the radar to throw it because you're surfaced at that point. You find out, and throw the breakers. And yeah, when we were doing seal ops, the waves were breaking over top the weapon shipping hatch where they went out. So all that water, it was just like, a toilet, the water
Yeah.
flowing and going down the toilet, right? And I mean, it was just, needless to say, the radar was ruined. And the military came through like normal. Instead of giving us an upgrade Beeps 15 radar, which really would have been nice. Now they gave us another Beeps 14, and it was too big to fit down the hatch. Okay. So we had to take it apart. And then guess what? The wiring diagrams, the engineering diagrams, they weren't right. So when
Of
we went to put
course.
it together, we blew up the new one because the wiring diagrams were wrong. Oh yeah, we made a change to that. Well, thank you very much. And then, I mean, it was just like one cascade after another. But back to your original question, I mean, during the Cold War, doing the operations we did, if I was an officer, I could tell you everything, but I'm not. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was a ball. It was an absolute, and you had fun too, even though you were working with other guys. Everybody was tired. Everybody was wore out. But at the same time, I mean, during Blue Nose initiation, I don't know if they do that anymore. We went above the polar ice cap or polar circle. Basically, you went through that and joined the Order of Blue Nose, and I mean, it's just like we knew we were going to get hammered because we weren't blue noses. So okay, fine. We stole the old man's door off his stateroom. We stole the block of ice that they're going to sit us on while they were feeding us truth serum and all these things. And we short sheeted beds, and for the guys that were going to initiate us, and put wet bread dough inside their bed. Things like that were fun. And then And then they got even with us after the fact. They stuck us down in the TDU well, trash disposal unit well, and sprayed us with basically with fire, the fire hose. And it was probably above the Arctic Circle in the wintertime. So you can guess how cold that water
It
was, et
wasn't
cetera. So,
great,
I mean,
I'm
it wasn't
sure.
great, I'm sure. No, but again, it was all in good. It was all in fun, and it was all in camaraderie. So, but yeah, whether we were in the Mediterranean or the North Atlantic or wherever it may be, I mean, our goal was, if we were out there trailing another submarine, that's what we did. We did it for days, weeks, and months. If we were there to watch what's going on, that's what we were doing. And it was fun until after the Cold War. And then after the Cold War, then you were doing blue helmet operations. And then it became less fun.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah,
that.
I believe that.
What was it? What did it
What
teach
did it
you
teach
about
you about?
teamwork and resilience being on a submarine, the close quarters, stuck? I asked Brandon, Aaron, the same question. What was it like the first time you lock yourself in that submarine and now you're going under the water for an indefinite amount of time? And I have no idea how long you guys can stay down there without surfacing. I'm sure it's a ridiculous amount of time. That's got to be a weird feeling, right? Like knowing you're trapped, like you're stuck in this steel prison.
Well, you are. And, again, I wasn't claustrophobic at that point. I am now. Put me on an airplane and I'll tell them I'll seat or I don't fly, right? But at that point, I wasn't. But the first time that you walk on board, it's always like a holy cow, because you got to go through all the normal stuff. You have to go through the pre-dive checklist. You got to make sure the PMs were done right. All these things, all the work orders that were done when you were in port. So all that had to happen. But then that first time you hear the diving alarm, and you start to go under and the hull starts creaking, and of course that other shipmate that you have, that guy that's been on board, mine was Gonzalez. It's like he was on the boat twice, and what he did is he put a string across that portion of the hull, across, and then as we dove, that string started sagging and sagging and sagging, and then you heard the creaking and the moaning and everything else in the world, and you're like, okay, it's for real now. So it's but
Not
it
for
was good.
me.
Yeah,
Not for me. I'm no, thank you.
yeah. Well, and that's one reason why later on when I wanted to make a transition, I wanted to go tanks because I figured, well, at least then it's on the surface of the earth, right? Instead of being down under the water and coming up like a jellyfish if something happened. So it's like,
Yeah,
but but back to your other question, at about 65 days, the longest we were ever out without fresh air or anything, was about 70 days. Okay. And at about 65 days, guys that had some type of, they may have been a little bit claustrophobic and hit it, they started to snap. You could just see little things starting to happen. At the same time, the supply officer that we had on board, he stashed all the dang toilet paper down in the bilges, and we couldn't run them when we were north of the Arctic Circle because of where we were at, or we couldn't shoot trash or anything. So we were down to, we had number 10 cans of chili, uh, sweet potatoes, ham. And that was it at that point. That's what we were eating for the last like week. And,
that sounds
uh,
amazing.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and then again, because of the toilet paper, you used a form called a 1250 to order stuff, right? Well, the first three sheets were sheets. The last sheet was not a sheet; it was
The
cardboard, right?
carbon.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and then everything had to go in the TDU well because you couldn't put it in the sanitary to either blow it or pump it over, right? So it was like that was an incredible cruise. And I mean, our first news after that one, when we finally were somewhere, what was it? It was the Challenger exploded and the Bears won the Super Bowl. That was the two tidbits of news that we received when we finally went to the surface. It was like, holy cow, the world had changed so much.
Yeah, I remember Brandon talking about, the just how out of touch with everything you become because you're not getting, you, you might have enough juice to open one email with your time on the computer or whatever. And, you know, even back then I'm just thinking like, what do you do if you, like me, you have a nicotine addiction, right? And I'm sure back then a lot of people smoked. How do you smoke on a submarine? Do you smoke on a submarine? Can you smoke on a submarine? I'm sure back then you probably could. It was a lot different, right?
Yeah, back then, yeah, you just smoked away like a big dog. I mean, you'd walk into every place and it was like a smoke chamber. I chewed, okay? And I tried to quit chewing, and that didn't go real well. So I was bumming cigarettes and chewing cigarettes. I just took enough to like to last a week. Oh my goodness, that didn't work out. But
No.
yeah, you have smoke everywhere. Again, and then and it wasn't so bad when you were submerged, okay? But when it was bad was when you would surface because the hull is it's a circular hull, okay? So when you're on the surface transiting in and up in Connecticut, it was a 12-hour transit between the base and where your dive point was. So you would be riding the surface all the way, rolling and rocking and rolling, and major rolling and rocking. Then you had the diesel fumes coming because you're running the diesel instead of, you know, you're not on reactor power for propulsion. You're running the diesel. So that's getting sucked back in through the snorkel, and
Oh,
you're over top the radar, riding the radar. So, your whole thing was, okay, if I can just make it until the first person loses it, I'm okay. And normally you did everything in your power to get the junior officer of the deck to lose it. You'd hang that little bag on the other side of the radar where it's right next to them. If somebody else needed to use it, you let them use it. So, and then kind of waft that smell over. So, yeah, all in good jest, but yeah, it's a different world. And I'm sure,
yeah. You have a business now in leadership coaching, and you talked about to come on the show a significant experience with a mentor who kind of gave you a second chance, and that probably shaped a lot of your views on leadership. Let's talk about that for a minute.
yeah. Well, I think we all have a lot of mentors in our life, and I think you see leadership in everyone if you just take a chance to sit down, listen, and not talk all the time like I'm
Yeah, I
doing right
agree.
now.
Yeah, we
You
have
know,
two ears and one mouth for a reason.
bingo. But uh, my first submarine, it was we were on deployment. I think this one was. I think we were in the no, we were in the northern run at this point, and I was on geoplot, like I was talking earlier. When you're off your primary job, I was doing that and plotting stuff. And we had oh geez, an academy graduate that was hovering over me, getting in my way to plot, and kept getting in my way to plot. Kept getting in my way to plot. We were at periscope depth. We were rigged for black. I mean, we were on station. It couldn't be hotter without shooting weapons. Period. Okay, where we were at, and needless to say, he kept getting in my way. I kept asking him, "Move, please," so I can do what I need to do. And he kept getting in my way. And I finally just got tired of it, and I whacked him. And I thought I was safe, and he backed off. Thank you very much. Finally, he got the message, So, after that, I went and hit my rack, and we weren't drilling because we were on station. So, and then, I got woken up. Hey, the old man wants to see you. Like, okay, what does he want? So I walked in there and that was Captain Jones. Uh, I don't care, best captain in the world as far they're always the best captains or whatever. But yeah, I mean, he was awesome. I walked in there and he's like, hey, if you reenlist, you get a bonus. And you're just about past due on being able to reenlist. And I'm like, well, no, I'm on and out. I'm done with this stuff. I'm moving on. He's like, well, I have this memory last night. I was sitting up there in the con, and I'm like, oh no. And he's like, and it was Rick from Black. And I go, oh yeah, okay. And I seen you and Mr. Butter. That's the name of the officer. I seen you and Mr. Butter over there by the geo plot. And if my memory serves me right, I think you actually hit. And I can't take you hitting my officers. Laying down. And I'm like, what? Well, he's like, but, my memory, it's really important for me to get that silver dolphin flag for reenlistment. Okay. That you get to wave a silver dolphin flag if everybody reenlists. So he's like, so, my memory just may not be what it once was. And I know Mr. Butter would be good with this. If maybe you reenlist. And,
So he bribed you.
basically, yeah. And it wasn't the first time he bribed people, It's just like, so yeah, my career at that point, and I was still pretty reckless at that point with my life, and probably until I was 33, I think. I mean, when I got married, a few years after I got married, I mean, I was still a pretty wild child. But needless to say, I reenlisted. I went to C7 school, which is electronic engineering school out in San Diego, and the rest is history. I ended up staying in, and but he was good. He was a great captain. I mean, it's even like we used to do what was called agile players during the Cold War, where you had to get underway immediately, period. Okay. However you get underway, you get the crew that when you get the minimum number of crew on board, then you go. Whether or not the crew's trashed, whether or not they're sober, it didn't matter. And we were in Newport News for one, and I was duty driver that day. And the old man jumps in the van with me, and he's like, "We're going out to bribe the cops to get everybody out of jail." So we ended up going, and we had like 3 or 4 guys that were in jail already up in Newport News, and he was just again, he was using whatever petty fund he had, and we got back to the boat, and I think on the maneuvering watch, there were other sober people on the maneuvering watch, but I was one of the most sober because I was duty driver. It was just like it was, and we're going out the bay at Narragansett where there's islands, there's rocks, there's everything there. Nothing like but again, different world, different time, and
I mean,
again,
I feel like in the military, it's still a lot like that. Like you'll do a lot of crazy shit, not sober. Like that's just military lifestyle.
yeah, yeah. But he was good people. I would work for him in a heartbeat. And again, there's other mentors out there that stand out, but he's probably the one that changed my life the most.
Yeah. Let's talk about your transition. When did you decide it was time to get out, and what led to that decision? Was it just time to retire, or what did that look like for you?
No, mine was actually I had limited options. I was on a submarine in the Mediterranean. I actually went on a hard fill. They needed to fill the chief position, and I walked on board. And this was mid '90s, and it was for the 50th anniversary of D-Day. Okay, we were making that tour. We were going North Atlantic, then cutting back down to the Med. And I walked on board, and the word was, well, we need to fill this position. The chief was fired. Yada yada yada. I walked on board a day before we left. And they're like, yeah, you got a lot of work to do with your team. And it was for electronic surveillance measures and for forward ETs for navigation. And I had a lot of work to do. And basically, yeah, I was running a nuke time frame. Okay, then because every time that we would go to periscope depth, I'd be inside ESM to make sure, training the guys, making sure they knew what was going on when it came to radar contacts, etc., around us, so that we're not detected. So basically, I was living off of coffee and 2 hours sleep when we were underway, and when we were in port, I will just say that I partook in all the festivities, and I was living on like 2 hours of sleep when we were in port, and made it as far as I think we were like 5.5, 6 months into it. We were off the coast of this is back with when the Yugoslavian war was going on and the NATO operations. And we were sitting there poking holes in the water, watching what's going on. And fishermen are dropping dynamite around us fishing. And, you can see a fridge floating by through at periscope depth. You have no water under you. And, and of course, they have helos with torpedoes, right? At that point, I was pretty much, man, what am I doing here? But that wasn't the end of it, I mean, it's just like earlier when we were talking communication. At that point, you'd get one 30-word message a month from your family, okay? That was it, and maybe, not always. It depends whether or not message traffic would support it. So, I mean, between those 2 things, the world had changed. And then on the flip side, I started having I think I drug my body out pretty hard. So I started bleeding from places I shouldn't be bleeding from. And when we pulled back into Naples, they sent me into the doctors, and they're like, "You ain't going back on a boat," you know. And basically, I was pulled off the submarine at that point. And then in the next year, I mean, that was back. That's when the downsizing was going on in the mid '90s. And even though I was ranked number one at multiple commands, it didn't matter. It was like I was not going to make the next rating until like 8, 9 years later. And then I tried to go mine sweeps. It was like, well, if I go to a mine sweep, it's a small crew, they're like, you're untrainable. Okay. So be it. And then I tried to go in the army. I'm like, I'll ride a tank. This will be fun. You're untrainable. And I'm like, well, that's not any good. And then this offer came up to early retirement at, what was it? It was at 16 years, 17 years. And they offered me early retirement. It was 30 days notice. And, I jumped on it. And I was like, it was either that or go back overseas for a 2-year unaccompanied tour, which I really was not in the mood for. So that's what I
Yeah.
did, and we, it was a mad dash to find a job, and again, but it was the right move at that.
How were the struggles in the transition? Did you face any monumental struggles like most of us do when we get out? Specifically, substance abuse problems. I know that seems to be something you are, like most of us, right? Like it's just indoctrinated into you when you join the military. Alcohol and being a soldier, a sailor, a Marine, whatever. It's like they go hand in hand. It's almost expected of you. Did any of that carry over? Particularly, 30 days notice. I have similar situation, right? Like I had 9 years left. I was a career guy. I was planning on going to the end to 22, and at 13, they're like, nope, you're done. Med board, see you bye. Zero preparation, zero plan. Anything like that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I started drinking at the age of 12. Okay, so my first time that I got totally ripped was on a hockey trip to Fargo, North Dakota on the school bus. Yeah, 12, you know, and that was wild turkey. And yeah, so much of my life, I I was I can sit down, I can draw a line and go, did I abuse substances? Oh yeah, my entire life, most of my life, I have. And I think the getting out of the military, I was more settled down. I don't think I quite had that problem at that point. Uh, my main transition problem was not having a degree was a killer. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I've done all these things, and not having a degree and going into places, it's like I had to start at the bottom all the time, which is fine. You know, it's just there's a point where starting at the bottom becomes crazy, right? And but I think that was probably the biggest challenge. The other things were, but I think it's just having people look at you and go, "Yeah, you're capable of doing this. You've done this with how many people underway in much worse conditions." But HR or whomever doesn't quite give you credit for that. I think that was
Right.
more,
Yeah.
and I was proud. I mean, my goals when I got out of the military was not be drunk, not have many wrinkles, be not divorced, and not have gray hair. And I made it with most of it. I achieved most of those, not all of them. So
So you got into the basically helping mergers happen space, if you will. So how do you land that, and how does that influence what you do now? Imagine, my speculation is that you were doing it for other people, and you're like, well, I should be doing this for myself, not for other people. I'm sure that's probably pretty close, but how do you land, in a job doing, turnarounds and mergers and acquisitions? I'm sure all of that good stuff for corporations. What did that look like for you?
well, it's again most of the situations where I would get that opportunity were turnarounds. Okay, because they've already tried everything else in the world, right? They brought in these people that had the degrees and went through this and went through that, but they didn't know how to turn things around then. Okay, and so needless to say, I mean that's why I say like the first primary company that I went to, 9/11 happened right after I started. I mean it was like almost a year within a year of that, and our entire business changed. I mean, how many checks do you write right now, Adam, a week? Do you write any checks
I
at a bank?
mean, no, I don't write any checks at a bank.
Needless to say, that was 90% of our business was working on machines that processed them, either at the Fed level, the bank level, etc. Okay, that was our business. And with 9/11, what happened a few years later is Check 21 came into play. Check 21 basically made a picture of a check legal tender. And we figured, hey, banks are slow to adapt. We'll be good. And then we bought our competitor that was 100% like us, except for they hated us and we hated them. And yeah, and then we
So let's
started
just buy
believing,
them.
yeah, let's just buy them. Yeah, and let's just pay. Yeah, yeah. It's just so, and this was like the third or fourth acquisition that we had made, but this one, along with Who Moved My Cheese, became a nightmare because we're bleeding 20 to 25% of our customer base a year. Okay.
Oof.
And you just bought that other company. And then, every time you sell, too, a lot of times what happens is your inventory is part of your borrowing base, right? So all these old companies that you bought, you've got this obsolete inventory floating around. So you've got a noose around your neck. You've got how many other things going on, and now your business just totally changed, and you're privately owned, and nobody's going to give you money. Nobody.
Hmm.
So we had to reinvent ourselves, and that was the first major. I mean, I've been involved in it. In the military, we reinvented ourselves all the time, and then, of course, give you a new name, right? It's like, here's more money. But, in this situation, it was like, how do you reinvent yourself to work on anything in a bank and without the relationships with the manufacturers on top of it, or limited relationships, and turn the company around and sell it, and that's what we did. That was like 2006, 2007, and then we were finally, we were in a shrink mode for a number of years, getting positioned, and then it just blew up like in 2010, 2011, and then we were adding people, adding people, adding people, gaining new business, and the business sold in 2015, to a PE firm. And so again, we positioned ourselves where we were a national company providing service nationwide, and in our SLAs, service level agreements, like for banks, et cetera, were anywhere from 4 hours to 24 hours, depending on the type of equipment, where you had to have the right parts, the right technician, all these things, so that you did not, uh, you know, they didn't penalize you, in dollars. So, and we were very, very successful. The company sold, went to a PE firm, and of course, whenever the company sells, they bring in their own management team. That's just kind of the fact of life. So then you're figuring out what you're doing next, and that's when I started. Well, I'm done doing this. I might as well do this, do what I've been doing for other companies. So I did that for a couple of years, but it was always so hard to find customers, right? You know, it's like
Hmm.
when you're out there, you're the only person, you're a sole proprietor, finding customers is hard. So, I did that for a while. And then I went to IBM because they wanted me to come in there and work with companies like Apple, Cisco, as to having them outsource what their core competencies are. So, and that's what I did for a couple of years. And then I went to another turnaround after that. Again, IBM bought Red Hat for $34 billion, and they spun us off. So it's like your world changed again. And then they change your
Yeah.
compensation plan. It's like, well, that's no good. And then you moved on. I moved on to my next company that needed to be turned around. And then, of course, COVID hit with that one. You know, so that was, the ownership was immediately, well, we need to shut everything down. It's like, no, no, yeah, we don't. We just got to follow the guidelines. And what was it? We were running at 70% personnel, and we were selling 150% of budget. So we were just blowing it out of the water.
Yeah.
And our owner then sold to another, that owner sold to a PE firm in our competition. And kind of the same rinse and repeat situation. They bring in their own team. I go back to, they throw me into facilities, I'm bored, yada, yada, etc. And then I start striking out again, going out and working for other companies, trying to help them do those transitions, and hopefully do it where if they decide they want to sell, they sell to another small or medium-sized business versus going to a PE firm or something like that.
And so you got fed up with chasing your tail trying to get clients, so you started the Wolfpack Leadership Company.
Yep. Yeah,
And
yes, and
so,
and mhm. Go ahead.
man, let's talk about Wolfpack Leadership. What is it? What do you do? And how do you do it?
Well, I have a number of different components, okay? But the big thing is when I go to work with companies, I truly believe it is 1% better every day. Okay. It's baby steps. Going in there and doing an analysis, understanding what that company's doing and where they can do slight tweaks to make a difference because nobody wants to change anywhere. Nobody change is hard, and it's going in there and really and truly what I'm trying to remember the name of the show for Undercover Boss. It's kind of the same idea where you go in there and kind of get an idea of what's happening. I always walk in the back door when I go somewhere, so I can see what's truly going on. But the goal is to sit down and provide tweaks that ownership can use that make a big difference. Okay, and you know the saying, small hinges open big doors, right? It's just and that's truly it. And I try to concentrate on three areas. Of course, resilience is one of them. Leadership, soft skills are terrible, everywhere. And then, on top of that, it's continued growth, trying to concentrate on those three areas, but it does spiral off, it's just, or spider web off, I should say. But it's just, that's primarily it is when it comes to individual businesses and then working with them, on a one-on-one basis or on a group basis to get them to achieve their goals. I mean, they're the only ones that are going to achieve the goals. I can only bring things up to them that make sense, right? And so, I mean, that's primarily it when it comes to individuals or small to medium sized businesses. And that's where I like to play is in the small to medium sized business. I find that they're more open to listening than other companies. And I've fired companies that I've gone to before where you walk in the door, you spend a week or two there, and they don't want to listen to you. So it's like, oh, I don't want to take your money. You know, this is ridiculous. You're not going to do anything, so we might as well just move on. You know, and we're values we don't align. So, but and I think kind of in that mode too, that same that small to medium sized business, and this is a corporate problem too, is frontline, middle line managers are always thrown to the wolves. Period. It's like you've got a great salesperson who knocks the numbers out of the park all the time, or it could be an engineer, it could be a programmer. I don't care what it is. Well, the next place for them is to put them into management. We don't train them. We don't do nothing with them. We just, well, they might give them an online training course, which is absolutely, pretty limited. But at the same time, they get thrown to the wolves, and then people wonder why they're failing. And that's the first person. Those are always the first that could, you know, get thrown under the bus. Or it's the frontline managers and it's middle level managers. So that's one area I like to work. To give them more of the tools that they need to be successful out there. So, and that's the primary component. Then on the other side, what I like to do is speak to colleges or companies. But colleges, I think, with all the challenges we have in the world right now, it's like last week I went up to Mizzou and spoke to their engineering class. It's like, they just see the negative in it on TikTok and everything else in the world, and there's some real challenges with mental state right now for them. And it's trying to get that point across that they are actually enough, they're valuable, they have something to add, in the future for everyone, and trying to get them raise their level, and explain to them why it's so important for them to get done up their degrees, why it's so important for them to be, do all these things. So, that's the flip side. And, that's not my bread and butter side, but to me, I think that's pretty darn important. But again, I speak, I coach, I consult. Yeah. Hey, I'll pull a rattlesnake out of your outhouse if you want me to.
Well, and I love your approach to when you first take on a new client, coming in the back door and sitting down and just kind of observing without introducing yourself, without anybody knowing. And I used to take that approach later in my career when I would get a new squad or a new platoon. For the first week, I'm just going to a new company. I'm just looking around, figuring out who's who, what's going on, what are the issues, what's not being handled correctly, what kind of leadership, style are these guys going to resonate with, that kind of thing. So what are you learning when you're doing this? What are some of the common problems you see? Because I'm sure there's some very common problems. And then we're going to touch on the second piece because I got thoughts and feelings about the social media thing that you were just describing as well.
Well, yeah, and that's a great question. What do I observe? I think the biggest thing that I observe is everybody gets stuck in their little kingdom. Okay. By that, what I'm saying is I could sit out in that warehouse all day long and I may not see anybody in management come out there. Period. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a large disconnect. And that's why, no matter where I am, I put it on my schedule so I don't miss it. I'll put it on my calendar. Is go walk the warehouse, go walk this, go do this, go do that. I did it when as you said, in the military, there was one time schedule. Okay. You had to get things going the right way if you walked into a turnaround within 3 to 6 months. In the civilian world, you gotta, it's an entirely different, it's a lot longer runway, where you got to sit there and, I'll start to see baby step changes at 6 months, at 12 months, this is where we'll be, and, but I think the big thing is the lack of engagement. Okay. And that's why I've got like the 4 E's that I play with, it's engagement. It's walking around, knowing what's going on. When I ran service for a national organization, I'd drive out there, fly out there. I'd spend time with customers. I'd spend time with the technicians, you know, to understand what they're doing. And I hate going to, Applebee's. Do not ask me to go to Applebee's. Every technician in the world wants to go to Applebee's, and it's like ham and chili, and canned ham, canned chili, and yams from the submarine. Where
That's how
that's
I
all we
feel
had.
about Burger King after 13 years in the Army, and that's the only option you have because it's the only thing on post most of the time. I won't eat Burger King, so I resonate with what you're saying.
Out there. Yeah, yeah. But I think it's engagement, empathy, empowerment, and encouragement. I think those are the key things. If you walk around and it's just like when I sold for IBM, or you sell, no matter what you do, you sell. You sell yourself. You sell
Yep.
leadership. You sell
You're either a
inspiration.
buyer or a seller in this world.
Bingo, bingo.
You choose.
That's exactly right. And, you've got to walk around. You see their workspace, you see their picture of their dog, all 12 of them, all 19 of them, whatever, and, oh, they're a dog lover. Well, so am I. Okay. So what's that common thing? And then you start digging into it. You just start to build relationships with them, and you remember, and you take, if you have to, you take notes. I mean, I used to have a list of all my customers, when I was a technician still in the field, and what they liked, what their birthdays were, what they liked. I had 150, 200 customers. But, when the holidays rolled around, I'd go out and buy bonbons for my biggest customers, little
Yep.
things,
Well,
and,
and
yeah,
you're hitting on it because in the military, at least in the Army side of things, part of the condition to be a good leader is knowing your soldiers, right? Like knowing, and not just like knowing a little bit about them, but understanding who their family is, what they know, like, love, trust, all that good stuff. Who are they as a person? And I kind of prided myself on that because I didn't have a lot of leaders coming up that would do that for me. And I see this problem that you're talking about a lot, not engaged leaders stuck in their own little castles on this throne of power that they have, acquired. And they're not servant leaders. They're just figureheads in a position. And I think it's sad. And I think that's tied to what you were talking about, that you claim that you're not very good at, or that it's not your bread and butter, but the softer skill stuff, and teaching people that social media creates this fake environment and this unattainable goal, right? Like, I'll use like the private jet example thing that you see kids doing. Did you know that there are studios that will charge you thousands of dollars an hour to come do a photo shoot for social media in a mock-up of a private jet? So I want people to understand, if you're one of those doom scrollers who is sucked into social media and this, unattainable lifestyle, a lot of people are lying to you. I'm not saying that everybody on social media is, not well off and doesn't have access to private jets, but there's a new channel that popped up on TikTok. I think it's great. It's called Amalfi Jets, but I'm into aviation, and a private jet, to charter a private jet is like $40,000, right? Versus people will go pay $2,000 for an hour to take 50 pictures in a mock-up of a private jet in a studio in LA. They'll post it on social media and they'll make all that money back because they're fooling you. And so is that, you said that, getting these people to understand that they have value, that they have worth, and get them out of the social media atmosphere and into their corporation where they could actually make a difference and do something. I think you're probably better at that than you think that you are. It's just a really hard thing because we're so attached to it. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. We didn't used to be that way. I'm largely one of the last generations. I was a senior in high school before cell phones were obtainable for people like me. I think my first cell phone, I was a senior in high school. It cost me $17 a month. and the only reason I could get one is because I had a job. You know what I mean? But we're so connected, and I'm just as guilty. I work on my phone when I'm not supposed to be doing. I don't set boundaries for myself all the time like I should. Before I did my ayahuasca trip, I was deep into the political, social media atmosphere, which is terribly unhealthy for you. I don't care what side of the aisle you live on or what your beliefs are. All of this is engineered to really keep you down, I believe. And I think you're probably seeing the same thing, right?
I 100% agree, and I can tell it in myself when I start to get hooked. I mean, I haven't watched national news for probably more than 15 years. Okay. But but I do go online and look at news quickly. But at the same time, I can tell when I start to get sucked back into that mess because my anxiety levels go up, and that's the goal. That's the goal. It's fight or flight. And and it's very. I see it in so many people too, and number one, you can't throw rocks. It's just, but you can make people aware of it. And that's why I say I think we have to move beyond that. We have to restore those face-to-face type relationships in the world right now, and I truly believe I was glad to see when was it the Surgeon General goes, oh yeah, well it can cause damage to kids. Well, duh, social media. I'm glad you finally figured that one out. I mean, you can see an entire generation right now that's having challenges. Plus, everybody that's wasn't brought up on it is having challenges because of it. So
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that because one of my best friends, his son is 10 now, but I can remember when he's 3 or 4, he knew how to work YouTube better than I did on the phone, and it's like it's crazy. It's insane, the damage that and believe me, I'm not hating on technology because I'm so grateful for the technology advances that we have, particularly being one of the last kids who grew up with a corded phone in the living room, having to ride my bicycle to my friend's house, knock on the door to find out that they're not home, to turn around and ride my bicycle back, to my house and figure out what to do. Right. Like, and again, I'm not trying to say I'm better than anybody else because I am just as guilty, particularly, when you are trying to build your own business, particularly in the space that I'm doing, you spend a lot of time on social media looking for content that you can create that speaks to your audience. It's like a necessary evil. And so you need to institute boundaries, and really kind of monitor yourself with that, because like what you just said, I particularly as of late with everything political that's going on, and this is not one side or the other, but like all of that stuff is meant to cause division and, like you said, the fight or flight response and get a reaction out of you. And I will find myself falling right back into that trap. And it's like, I want to throw my phone across the room because of it, because I'm stronger. I'm a stronger person and I have the self-awareness to not let myself fall into that. But it's just like it's designed to make you fall into it, particularly if I'm researching. I'm scrolling to research. I've got a community of veteran entrepreneurs, and I find interesting things that I pass along to them that maybe will help them in their business, or things that'll help me in my business. And it's unavoidable, so you have to be aware of it and you have to set those boundaries.
I agree. I'm with you 100%. Like I say, it's especially when you have an addictive personality. Okay, it's just you can easily toss one thing over to the next, and it still gives you those little highs. And that's part of it too. Is as I'm putting stuff together, my website's in development. This is going on, that's going on. Of course, posting on LinkedIn. You know, and you want those likes, but at the same time, it's like, God, is there another way to do this?
Yeah.
And but there isn't. You got to go all channels. You got to look at all channels to provide that. To provide the assistance to others that you want to do.
Well, I'm so glad you brought it up, because posting on LinkedIn to build the audience, to get engagement, to get a customer base, right? I was guilty of this until about a month and a half, 2 months ago. Every day my routine, because it's what it takes to actually build an audience, is you have to engage. You have to be, you're spending about 2 or 3 hours of your time to grow an audience, a solid audience, a quality audience of qualified buyers in the future. But you get attached to, oh, my post didn't get the number of impressions that it was supposed to get, and the likes are down, and and the comments are down, and now all of my metrics are falling, and it's like it's really easy to get sucked into that. And I stopped all of it. I will go on. I will engage with 3 or 4 people now, whoever's first in my feed when I decide to sit down and do my post for the day or whatever. And then I post, and then I'm gone. I'm done. I mean, I don't fall into that trap anymore, because, I very much believe, that building an organic audience, they will see your content regardless, and they will engage with it. And those are the people that matter, right? You don't need to care about, getting 500 likes and 70,000 impressions and being viral, because it's fleeting. It doesn't last forever. What lasts forever is building a quality audience of qualified buyers who resonate with everything that you're saying. And so, another way you can put a boundary in there.
Yep. Well, I think it's I think you kind of just walked around being authentic. That's the whole thing.
Exactly.
I think you care, and you put things out there that are true to your heart, and you don't get sucked into things. You're going to be able to deliver to those that really want. Because really, it's one person at a time. You might talk to 100 people, but it's that one person. If you can make a difference in their life, and I think that's key. It's just making that difference. And that's my entire life. That's always been it. Is how do you impact somebody? It's every day when you're walking around. It's just like I'm Maxwell certified also. And John Maxwell came out with some books on high road leader, and one of the key things is, of course, adding value to others. I mean, that's it. Why else are we here? It's just like if you run into somebody out there, it's just like a couple of weeks ago I did a sermon at our church because our pastor was gone, and that's what I talked about. But I mean, you see people in need, and they have purpose if you just give them a chance, and there are people, and it's like there's times I feel guilty because I see that same person on the corner all the time, and it's like, well, that guy should be able to work, but I don't know his story, I don't know his story, and I haven't asked his story. Maybe I should,
Yeah.
So it's we don't know, and I think that's one of the things we just go surface level now instead of really digging in and understanding who people are, what they are, and how they fit into things, and the long-term plan here. So
yeah, I'm with you 100%. Jay, brother, so thank you so much for being here today. Tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in some of your leadership coaching, or just sitting down and having a conversation and getting to know you and figuring out how you might be able to help them along their journey. Let everybody know how they can get in touch with you and where they can find you.
Well, Adam, thank you. And right now my website is in development, so I'm just gonna give you an email account right now. It's Jay's Jays speaking as it's spelled at gmail.com. Just reach out to that, Jay's speaking at gmail.com, and I'll have more information down the road here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Adam, and it's great talking to your audience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you for being here, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Jay Patterson. Don't forget to like, share, rate, review, download this episode. Help me get this in front of 1 million veterans before I turn 40. Also, as of yesterday, the Stronghold community is free for every military member to join. You guys clearly know the value that's there, just didn't want to invest in yourselves. So in a bold move, I decided to make it free for everybody because there's too much good information and too much stuff going on in there that can help everybody, that I don't want to keep it behind a paywall. I'll figure something else out later. So until next week, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another wonderful episode with Jay Patterson of the Strategic Veteran Podcast, and we will see you next week. Take care, everybody. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at the Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.